I stood frozen, helpless, as the HOA president, a woman I'd soon come to know as Karen, shoved my disabled daughter to the ground, all over some homemade Christmas lights. But little did she realize exactly who she had just crossed. What would happen when she found out I'm a U.S. Army general commanding thousands of troops? My blood boiled watching that cruel moment unfold. Just seconds ago, all was well. Emma's smile lit up our driveway, brighter than even the finest string of lights ever could. "Dad, look how many kids came," she'd cried to me a while ago, forgetting in her enthusiasm the pain in her legs. My 16-year-old daughter, who's wheelchair-bound because of her multiple sclerosis, had been coping just fine with just a crutch today. A good day for her. We'd only been living in Evergreen Heights for 3 months. The move had been tough on Emma, especially with my deployment coming up, but she'd found her own way to connect by creating homemade Christmas lights out of recycled materials. "It's good for the environment and helps with my therapy," she told me, her determined eyes shining just like mine. I lingered on the porch, cup of coffee clutched in my hand, watching neighborhood kids gather around her folding table. Stars, snowflakes, little houses, all lit softly with battery-powered LEDs. Emma wasn't peddling them. She was handing them out free to spread holiday cheer. "This one colors," she explained to a freckly boy who stood staring at a snowflake in wonder. "You just press here on this button." I grinned to myself. Moments like these made all the single-parent struggles worthwhile. My wife had passed away 3 years previous, and Emma and I had since been an unstoppable duo. Her disability never quashed her spirit. Quite the opposite, it fueled her fire. Then, cutting through the laughter and joviality, the silence was shattered by a harsh voice. "Is that my Tyler taking something off your table?" A black SUV with hazard lights on pulled up. Out of it emerged a woman in an expensive puffer coat, cold and suspicious beneath immaculately styled blonde hair. "Hi," Emma smiled and greeted. "Your son picked the blue star. It's waterproof too, so you can put it outside." But the woman Diane Reynolds, the treasurer of the HOA board, strode over to us, heels clicking ominously. "Tyler, get over here right now," she growled. The small boy who was holding Emma's light stood frozen, his face falling. "But Mom, she's giving them away free," Tyler sulked. "I don't care what she says. We don't steal from strangers," Diane snapped, pulling the light away from his hand. I set my coffee down, sensing something was brewing. "Good morning," I said softly, descending from the porch. "I'm James Wilson, Emma's father. We've been here since this fall." Diane barely even glanced my way. "You can't have a business out of your house unless you get HOA approval. It's in the bylaws, Section 12. Emma's smile faltered. "Oh, but I'm not selling anything. They're gifts, right?" Diane pretended to roll her eyes. "And I'll wager you're not soliciting my son either." The accusation hung in the air, freezing the parents standing nearby into stunned silence. "Ma'am," I said to her, voice steady with military poise, "my daughter is simply demonstrating neighborhood kids her hobby." "Your daughter needs to learn about boundaries," Diane snarled at the children. "Tyler, get out of it. We're late for your piano lesson." The boy begrudgingly pulled himself away, gazing back wistfully at Emma's lights. Maybe another time, Emma called sympathetically, waving. That's when Diane lost it. She wheeled around and stormed back to Emma. "Don't talk to my son. Don't even look at him." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Emma started, but Diane shoved her hard in the shoulder. Emma, crutching across the patio, collapsed to the ground, landing with a sickening thud. Her crutch rolled away. "Emma," I rushed forward as kids ran in shock. "Your quirky little craft fair is over," Diane sneered, grabbing Tyler's arm. "There will be an official violation notice. The HOA doesn't allow yard sales without permission." Emma's face twisted in pain as I knelt beside her. "Dad, my leg," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Hey, you can't push a person in split," I cried out as Diane pulled Tyler away to her SUV. She halted, looking over her shoulder. "Obey the rules next time," she snarled. The SUV sped away, and neighbors stood in stunned silence. Next-door neighbor Mrs. Patel hurried over to help me gather Emma's scattered craftwork. "Who was that awful woman?" I asked, holding my daughter who couldn't walk. I looked down at the tear-stained face of Emma, and the same old heat rising to the surface in my chest. The same fierce resolve I have before leading my men into battle. "Diane Reynolds," Mrs. Patel had whispered to me, "the HOA treasurer whose husband is a member of the city council. In Evergreen Heights, nobody gets in her way without suffering repercussions. Diane had no clue, however, picking a fight with the wrong clan. 2 decades in the Army had imparted a thing or two about strategy and perseverance. "Dad," Emma whispered, holding tight to my arm as I gingerly picked her up. "My lights. Some of them broke." That is when something in me toughened. Diane had no clue that the meek neighbor she taunted was a general of more than 3,000 troops. Neither did she know coercing my disabled child would be the most egregious mistake she'd make this Christmas. And sooner than later, she'd learn just whom she was messing with. That evening, my phone rang. The HOA president's number shining menacingly on the face of the phone. I knew then war had officially begun. What would these self-proclaimed HOA thugs do when they discovered just what they'd gotten themselves into? Mr. Wilson, Mr. Robert Greenfield, president of the Evergreen Heights Homeowners Association. His voice was fatigued, practiced. "We have a report of an incident at your house today that causes us concern." I sat at Emma's bedside as she finally fell asleep, pain medication blunting the flare-up caused by her fall. Her left leg was numb and the right ached with nerve pain. Bed rest for a minimum of 3 days had been prescribed by the doctor. "Disturbing indeed," I responded quietly. "A member of your board physically attacked my disabled daughter this morning. I have it on tape." Silence filled the line. Then I sent the video. Security cameras had recorded the whole thing. Diane Reynolds shoving Emma onto the sidewalk. The fabricated allegations. The outraged neighbors' faces. The silence at the other end was unbelievable as I held my breath. "Mr. Wilson, these cases do take some time. Perhaps we could meet tomorrow morning and discuss it." "I have a 7 p.m. free slot." I interrupt firmly. "I'll have the film as well as medical records of my daughter's condition. I recommend that Mrs. Reynolds join us as well." I hung up and watched the video again, every second in high definition. I shared a copy with my military attorney, Major Sarah Collins, with a short note. Her reply in minutes: "Sir, this is undisputed assault of a minor with a disability. Press charges." But I stalled. Emma hated a fight, and with my job and our new move, criminal charges would immediately render us social outcasts. There has to be another option. The following morning, groaning in agony, Emma insisted on going to school. "I won't let her win, Dad," she declared stubbornly as I rolled her into her wheelchair, "and I have chemistry lab today." At work, I was unable to focus on getting ready to deploy. Serving as a brigadier general overseeing logistics for 3 battalions, my days were spent in stacks of paper to fill out. But my mind kept drifting to Emma in the HOA meeting tonight. Over lunch, I received a text message from an unknown number. "This is Jim Reynolds, Tyler's dad. Can we speak before you go to tonight's meeting?" I am at the coffee shop on Main Street. 20 minutes later, I was facing a man who looked nothing like his wife. Softly spoken, gentle eyes, and nervously fidgeting hands, which endlessly adjusted his tie. "I apologize for what happened," he began immediately. "Tyler told me everything about Diane. She overreacts." I kept my tone level. "Your wife attacked my disabled daughter." Jim flinched. "I know, it was inexcusable. But there's something you should know." He edged closer. "Diane sitting on the HOA board is the one thing that's important to her. If this gets out, it already has." "Some of our neighbors witnessed it," I interrupted. "Please continue." He hunched over closer. "We want to make this right. Whatever Emma needs, medical bills, whatever, I'll cover it myself. Just don't charge us." I observed him closely. What was he doing here, really? Was he genuinely sorry, or merely brought by Diane? His shoulders bent forward. "She has no clue I'm here. She thinks your daughter was soliciting off the books, and that you're exaggerating." "But Tyler," he whispered, "he cried all night long. He said Emma's the one child who's ever treated him kindly since we moved here a year ago." That struck me. "We're not longtime residents," Jim explained. "Diane worked hard to get on the board. She thinks it'll help my city council career if we're seen as community leaders. We're not bad people, James. Sometimes she gets carried away." I recalled Emma, her kindness even to those who had done her wrong. "I'll consider what you've said," I told him, "but I require Diane at this meeting tonight, and I require an apology before Emma." Jim nodded quickly. "I'll make sure she's there. I went in dress uniform that night, not to impress anyone, but I had just returned from base. Emma demanded to go along too, though she needed her wheelchair for this evening." The room instantly grew quiet when we entered. 7 board members sat behind a large table, Diane Reynolds missing. About 20 neighbors made up the group, featuring Mrs. Patel and a few parents, who had all heard the incident happen the previous day. The president, Robert Greenfield, stood up and held out his hand. General Wilson, we weren't expecting you. Your application. Your profession isn't listed. I shook his hand firmly. Brigadier General, and to be honest, my profession didn't count. Until now. Silent gasps spread throughout the room. Silent power had dramatically changed. Where is Mrs. Reynolds? I inquired. Unfortunately, she couldn't attend, Robert began, but before he could finish, the door swung open. Diane stormed in with Jim trailing behind her. She froze when she saw me, her eyes widening at the uniform, then narrowing as they landed on Emma. Sorry we're late, Jim said quickly, guiding his wife to an empty chair. Robert cleared his throat nervously. We've called this emergency meeting to address yesterday's unfortunate incident. I stepped forward and placed a USB drive on the table. This contains footage from my security cameras. But let me make one thing clear first. I turned to face the room. My daughter Emma has multiple sclerosis. Those lights for holiday decorating she was handing out? They're for her physical therapy. Her neurologist ordered fine motor exercises to maintain dexterity and flare-ups. Emma rolled herself forward. I wasn't selling anything, she explained softly but firmly. I just wanted to make friends before Dad goes overseas next month. Whispers filled the room. I continued. Yesterday, Mrs. Reynolds accused my daughter of harassment and running an unauthorized business. Both are false. More importantly, she assaulted a disabled child physically, causing a severe MS flare-up requiring treatment. That did not happen, Diane burst out. She was flirting with my son, Diane asserted. Mom, for Pete's sake. Tyler abruptly appeared behind Jim, his face flushed. Emma was simply being nice to me. She understands the other kids won't greet me because they're afraid of you. The room went completely silent. Diane's mouth opened and closed without making a sound. I've got the tape cued, I said quietly. Would someone care to view it? Robert glanced over at the rest of the board members, who grudgingly agreed. He inserted the USB into a laptop, and the projection screen came to life. We stood there in mute shock as the scene unfolded just as it had happened. Children huddled excitedly, Emma's cheerful descriptions, Diane's rough methods, and finally the unmistakable shove that sent Emma to the ground. When the video ended, I shattered the stunned silence. I haven't yet made police charges. I was hoping to give this community a chance to handle this properly first. Robert removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Mrs. Reynolds, do you have anything to say? Everybody stared at Diane, whose complexion had paled. For a moment, she seemed to be on the verge of objecting. Then she stared into Tyler's tear-stained face, and something in her mask gave way. She began, but was cut short by the door opening again. A police officer in uniform stepped in. Sorry to interrupt. There's a General Wilson here. We got a call about an assault on a child. The room temperature dropped 20 degrees. I didn't make the call. So who had? On the other side of the room, Mrs. Patel took her hand away from her leg, her eyes still cast downward. At that moment, I realized things had spiraled out of control. Emma squeezed my hand tightly. The counting down of my own deployment echoed in my head. In 17 days, I'd be halfway across the world, unable to protect my daughter from whatever consequences were in store for her next. What if this became a criminal charge when I was gone? And how much worse once the entire neighborhood knew whose lips had spoken to Diane of the authorities? Cameras clicked and heads turned when I walked into the Pine Valley HOA meeting room for the second time. My dress uniform starched, the 3 stars on each shoulder glinting. Emma followed on her crutch. Yesterday's tumble had bruised her arm a deep purple. The whispers started immediately. Is that really 3 stars? That's a Lieutenant General, 3rd Infantry Division Commander. Diane Jackson sat in the front row with a plump folder marked Violations. Her smirk disappeared when she caught sight of my uniform. Her son Tyler sat 2 rows back, eyes to the floor. HOA President Reynolds dropped his gavel in mid-sentence. General Wilson, we weren't anticipating. Your line of work wasn't listed on your residency application. Military service isn't a choice on your forms, I replied, my tone firm but even. The room air turned cold. Assault of a disabled minor is expressly covered in your community bylaws, I announced, distributing copies of Section 8, Paragraph 3, firmly underlined for everyone's benefit. Phones silenced as I placed a USB drive on the table. That contains 4 angles of security video of Miss Jackson shoving my daughter onto the floor yesterday, and 7 witness statements, of which one is her own son. Diane jumped up, her voice shrill. He has no clue what he saw. Your daughter was pestering him. Tyler, will you explain to everyone what really happened? The boy stared from his mother to Emma. Emma was selling Christmas lights she had made. I asked for one. Mom got mad and pushed her. Emma didn't do anything wrong. You're grounded, Diane snapped at her son. That's enough. Reynolds slammed his gavel. Ms. Jackson, this is extremely serious. I had no idea she was disabled, Diane muttered, her defensive posture weakening. That shouldn't matter, said a woman from the back row, standing up. I'm Dr. Martinez from Pine Valley Medical Center. Disabled or not, pushing a child is assault. I nodded gratefully toward the doctor. The sheriff now possesses this video. They're holding on for my call as to whether I'm going to charge. Reynolds dabbed his brow with a handkerchief. General, perhaps we can handle this internally. My daughter has multiple sclerosis, I responded, my tough soldier facade finally cracking. Those homemade lights are part of her physical therapy program. Her doctor recommended craft projects to improve fine motor skills and give her confidence before I deployed. Emma stepped forward, her voice shaky but determined. I just wanted to make friends before Dad leaves tomorrow. I'll be alone for 7 months while he serves overseas. Her eyes swept the room. Is giving homemade gifts against the rules here? Diane avoided my gaze, staring at the floor. Her earlier rage gave way to visible discomfort. The room fell utterly silent. Reynolds cleared his throat. Ms. Jackson has filed 17 complaints against your household in the 3 weeks you've lived here. Christmas lights outside HOA, approved dates, improper trash bin placement, unauthorized sidewalk chalk. A snort came from the back. Sidewalk chalk, I explained. My daughter uses chalk to mark safe pathways for her mobility practice. Her physical therapist recommended it. A white-haired gentleman rose from the board table. I am Judge Franklin, retired. I've lived in Pine Valley 30 years, and I'm ashamed at what I'm hearing. While you prepare to wage war against our country, General Williams, we've been bullying your disabled daughter over Christmas lights and sidewalk chalk. Grumblings of agreement spread. I move that all complaints against the Williams residents be dismissed outright, the judge continued, and I believe Ms. Jackson needs to consider her position on this board. Diane leaped up, reaching for her purse. This is ridiculous. You're all taking their side because he's in uniform. I'm calling my lawyer. As she strode toward the door, she nearly collided with a police officer who entered the room. Miss Diane Jackson, he announced in an even tone, I need to talk to you about a complaint of assault. There was a burst of shock gas in the room as Diane was taken outside. Reynolds wildly rapped his gavel, trying to restore order. Tyler approached Emma, crying, Sorry about my mom. May I still have a Christmas light? Emma smiled and reached into her pocket, taking out a new blue snowflake light. I made you a new one. Would that childhood act of decency be enough to heal the cracks in the neighborhood? And with my own deployment hours away, who would take care of my daughter if Diane's grudge went beyond HOA grievances? Rain pounded the window of my Afghani barracks as my video chat with Emma finally connected after 3 days of try after try. 7 months had passed since I'd squeezed her goodbye. Her face filled my screen, but something was off. She was smiling more than I'd ever witnessed in years. Dad, you won't believe what happened, Emma started, sweeping her camera across our front lawn. A stone pathway now traversed our yard, edged by dozens of handmade colorful decorations. Not only did the HOA sanction it, but they assisted in building it. What? How did it happen? I edged closer to the screen. Emma's camera accompanied her to the living room, where some neighbors were waving to me. I saw Mr. Reynolds, Judge Franklin, Dr. Martinez, and others whom I barely knew before deploying. After you were gone, it was crazy, Emma replied. Mrs. Jackson's lawyer sent threatening letters to everybody, even Tyler. She wanted to sue the whole neighborhood. Judge Franklin materialized on screen. General Williams, nice to see you, sir. When Diane's threats didn't scare her, she did something else. She went to the local newspaper. Reynolds solemnly nodded. Her plan came back on her in spectacular fashion. The investigation by the reporter uncovered that Diane had been misreporting false violations against half the subdivision for years, using HOA fees to fund personal vacations. Financial audit was my idea, said a woman I did not know. She stepped forward and introduced herself as Mrs. Peterson, our new HOA treasurer. 15 years of bookkeeping under my belt paid dividends at last. Emma's camera shifted to shoot Tyler seated at our dining table, carefully painting a wooden lantern frame. Tyler stays with his dad now, Emma whispered very softly. Then Diane's deep voice boomed suddenly from off-camera somewhere. My body stiffened by habit. Emma panned the camera, recording Diane Jackson standing wobbly by our fireplace, thin, somehow smaller than the way I'd remembered her. May I speak with your father? She asked Emma quietly. Emma presented it to her, and I found myself facing the woman responsible for the harm my daughter suffered. General Williams, she began, trembling. I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was wrong. I remained silent. Anger management therapy and community service at the VA hospital was court-ordered. Diane continued, blinking rapidly. My dad was a Vietnam veteran with PTSD. He was mean to us. I was angry my whole life, controlling everything I could. She looked away for a second. At the VA, I met soldiers who had real problems, missing limbs, head injuries from IEDs, and yet they smiled, still helped others. It broke something inside me. From across the room, Tyler yelled out, Mom's changed now, General. She helps with Emma's arts and crafts classes twice a week. Tears gathered in Diane's eyes. Your daughter taught my son forgiveness, something I never could manage. Charges were dropped on condition that I go to therapy and community service. I resigned from the HOA board. That wasn't hard. Getting back into my son's trust was harder. Emma picked up the tablet, smiling. Dad, Emma, and I began a program called Lights of Hope for Kids with Disabilities. We get together in our garage to create decorations, and the funds benefit the families of veterans. The camera cut to a newspaper clipping tacked on our refrigerator. Military Child's Christmas Lights Project transforms divided neighborhood. We've raised nearly $5,000, Emma went on to say. Dr. Martinez assisted me with getting it registered as an actual nonprofit. Judge Franklin reappeared on the screen. We also rewrote the HOA bylaws overall. Section 1 now expressly guarantees therapeutic activities for disabled residents. We call it Emma's Rule. And what are your MS treatments, I asked, fighting against emotion. Dr. Martinez got me an appointment to see a specialist, Emma said. The crafting really has made my hands stronger. Look at this. She lifted her arm and slowly tightened her fist, something that had been nearly impossible before I left. Reynolds came over, swallowing hard. We've also scheduled a formal welcome home ceremony for you next month, General. The mayor will attend. During the call, I noticed my daughter laughing with neighbors who were virtual strangers a mere months earlier. That community that I'd feared would shun her had become her second family in my absence. Before ending the call, Emma showed me one last surprise, a large blue star light fixture mounted proudly above our front door. Tyler helped design it, she explained. It's our signal that a military family lives here. There are now 17 blue stars throughout Pine Valley Estates. 18, corrected Diane quietly from the background. I put one up last week, she said softly. The call had ended, and I sat alone in my barracks, staring at the blank screen. I had deployed ready for combat, ill with worry about leaving Emma alone. My daughter, though, had done something I could not do despite all my military training. She had forged peace. When I finally return home, will I find the guts to do what my daughter has already done? To actually forgive the woman who had done us wrong?